Hi, it's Kylie Coo. Welcome to my studio. So let's take a quick look at the masterboards that I've made over the last 2 weeks. The first lot mainly paint and stencils, and the second using the gel plate and again paint, stencils and some old wallpaper. That was a lot of fun. So ahead of me hopefully starting the mass make projects next week, I'm making another masterboard. This is very simple, very straightforward. I start with a similar substrate to the others, a piece of A3 mixed media paper, but you could use any sort of paper. You could even use an old cereal box. I'm going to be gluing down some old book pages, and I've got a mix of PVA and water for my glue. It's approximately 2 parts PVA to probably 1 part water, there or thereabouts. I didn't actually measure it. I have gone through so much really gel medium, matte medium. I was at Hobbycraft the other day picking up a couple other things, and I had a look at their matte gel mediums, and I thought, you know, for this project I've got a ton of PVA glue sitting about. The matte medium and the gel medium is so expensive just to use as a basic glue. So yeah, for this I'm just using this mix. All I'm going to do is I'm leaving the white edges on the book pages. Sometimes I take these off, but I've just decided just to make it easy, and I'm just going to leave these on. But what I'm going to try and do is only have the straight edges round the outside. So you saw there I lifted a bit of paper just to get the kind of edge that wasn't cut quite so straight, and that's all I'm going to do until I fill this piece of paper. Now I try to kind of vary how I'm putting them on. So in other words, I don't have them all going in a horizontal line or a vertical line. I'm mixing horizontal and vertical. And really it's just about filling the page. You could do this any way at all. I did think about using some scraps of paper as well, but actually decided against that in the end, because that will come in later stages when I start to make the projects from this. So I've got most of this video on at double speed, and there's the odd part where I've put it on even faster, because you know this is a simple process of gluing and sticking down all the way through. Just using an old brush there for the glue, just because I don't want to waste a new one. I try and keep some brushes specifically for glue. I was going to put the glue in a jar, but I didn't have one handy with a lid, so I've just put it in this little container just now, and probably I'll just put a bit of cling film over it, you know, the plastic wrap over it, because I made up way more than I intended. I'm probably going to do another sheet like this, but there was no point in doing two the exact same for this video. So I hope you're enjoying these masterboard videos. I have tried to do 3 weeks of videos, but making masterboards in different ways, and there's many other ways. There's no right way or wrong way to make a masterboard. This is just the way I've kind of done it before. And I think, as I said, I do have a masterboard playlist, and I already have videos in there of things that I make from the masterboards. But yeah, each time we do a project it's slightly different. See there, I mismeasured that somehow. Do take the edge off there, and I just fill in the little gaps with some more book pages, and I think this gives quite a nice look. Obviously the last couple of weeks I've done things that are quite colourful. This week I decided to do something a bit more muted, although probably I've ended up adding more depth of colour than I intended. I was really not going to do much more than this and a few kind of marks on it, but you know, when I start with things I do end up just getting carried away a little bit, and that's absolutely fine. So just trying to make sure I've got a good bond between the book pages and the substrate. Any bits sticking up I'll just come back in with a little bit more glue, but just using that palette knife really to scrape it down. And it's as simple as that, you know, and you could actually leave a masterboard at that point. It just takes away having to start with the complete blank page. A little bit sticking up at the edge there, but I'll deal with that later. So I'm now going to take one of my favourite inks. It's a sepia ink. This one is a Daler Rowney by FW, and in the same range I'm going to use an indigo. Now these will basically blend together on the page. I also have some water in a little spray bottle. So I'm just going to put a few drops on here and there. The way I use this, a little goes a long way. Taking out some other book pages that I'll just put underneath just to catch any of the ink that runs off, because I don't want to keep this in the centre of the page. I want it to be running off the edges, etc. So I just spray it with water and then I'll start to move it about. Now the more water I spray, the less intense the ink is going to be, and it will always dry that bit lighter anyway. So you can see I'm almost chasing it around the page. So of course it can make the paper quite damp. It will start to buckle a little bit, so it will start to pull if there are any buckles in it, but just, you know, holding it at the edges and letting it run each way just gets it spread out. And if I feel there's a bit that's not got enough, I'll either add more ink or I just spray a bit more water on it. So now just going to put some of the book pages on the top just to absorb any excess, and this will actually help it dry faster. It also means that it won't, when it dries, it won't be quite as intense because I'm lifting some of it up. And actually putting the book pages down also creates some nice marks and a bit of texture as well. So it's still looking quite light at this stage, and you know, I could leave this at any stage along the way, but I'm coming in with some indigo. I did want to add that in, so I'll come in with that, slightly less than the sepia, and I will wet it a bit, put some water spray on it, and again just move it about. So you would see at the very start of my video I had my gel plate from last week with all that gold that was left on the plate. I used more gold because the tube had split, so I just put on a good layer of that to then be able to clean the plate off, put some wet strength tissue paper on it, and then I have left it virtually the full week. I think last week I recorded on the Saturday. I'm recording this on the Friday because I've got something on tomorrow, but yeah, so it had a full 6 days sitting on the plate, 5 or 6 days sitting on the plate, and it pulled off nicely. Still a couple of marks on it where the tissue paper was slightly wrinkled, but overall fairly clean, which is good because I want to do some gel printing again fairly soon, and while I don't need a fully cleaned plate for it, getting a lot of it off will be helpful for that. So I'm now going to leave that to dry. You'll see I've lifted quite a bit of the ink off. I will now leave that to dry for a few minutes. So a few minutes later, I'm now going to add some white gesso. Now I could have actually done this before I added the ink, but yeah, I just decided at this point I wanted to do a bit more on this. And I'm not putting it on thick, it's really a case of kind of putting it on and almost scraping it off again. Some bits I'll put on ever so slightly thicker than others, and then what I'll do is I will use my palette knife, one of my favourite techniques, so simple but I love doing it. I just take the edge of my palette knife and just draw lines vertically, horizontally in different places, and again this just adds a bit of texture. Don't need a palette knife to do this, could use an old credit card or even a piece of kind of cardboard or something like that. And I don't know why I enjoy doing that so much. It's just something, one of my kind of signature things, I guess. I just love to do it. So once I get that all on, I again will leave it to dry just for a minute or so. It's quite thin and it's quite a nice day. I don't know why I always give the kind of weather report, but you know, nice day. Studio was lovely and warm and it dried quite quickly. So again, a minute later, got the old book pages out again, slightly sticking together because they're still kind of damp, but just laying them out because I'm actually going to add a bit more sepia ink to this. I now want to just knock back the kind of stark white of the gesso, and that's why I was saying I could have done that before I put down those first layers of ink, but actually by doing it this way it will add a bit more depth to it because some areas will be slightly darker. Now I decided that rather than diluting the ink too much this time, I would take my brush and take it over where the ink hadn't reached so far, although I do come back in and add a bit more ink, and I will add a bit more water as well, just to break up any big blobs. But what this does is the gesso will kind of grab hold of it, especially in the kind of lines that I made within the gesso, and it just helps that texture stand out just a little bit more. You'll see there I've not diluted that so far, but I will come in a moment and do so. I thought about leaving that as is, making it darker than the other side, but I do kind of even it out a little bit. Take it down to where I feel there's still a little bit of the white gesso showing, or indeed where I feel that the paper is a little bit too stark, hasn't got enough ink on it. So another few sprays and we're almost there. So as I say, very simple masterboard to make, and it's now slightly darker than I intended to begin with, but I'm very happy with it. And of course when I come to do the projects, then I can actually lighten it up again in a number of different ways. So, you know, if you've been making some masterboards along with me and you do want to show them, then, you know, please by all means tag me wherever and let me see what you're doing. Apologies if I'm sounding a little bit almost nasally this week. Fields round about have been harvested. There's a lot of dust in the air from that, and I'm feeling a little bit choked, but it's no more than that. So there we have it. You can see the lines, you can see the gesso is still there, but it's just darkened it that little bit. And I think I will probably be using some of the gold from the gel plate on some of my makes when I come to do them. I'm really pleased with how they turned out with just those little bits of colour. So thanks ever so much for watching. Do take care and hope to see you again next time. Bye for now.